these guys tell us we're ready.
Good to go.
Open up now?
Yeah,
All right,
please.
terrific.
Thanks.
Do I need to use this?
No. It'll just pick you up.
Oh, okay. Oops, sorry.
There you go.
See, this is why I'm
It'll
not a
get you.
politician.
There you go. No. Thanks.
Okay,
People
good.
are watching on live. We got a bunch of people who use this recording.
All right, terrific. Good morning, everybody. On behalf of Lil Corcoran and the entire team of the Women's Rights Information Center, I welcome Congressman Josh Gottheimer and other esteemed legislators, advocates, community, and civic leaders as we convene in front of what we affectionately call this little White House that has brought so much hope, stability, and self-determination to so many women and families in Bergen County. My name is Liz Corsini, and I'm a member of the Board of Directors, a longtime resident of Englewood, and a past executive of the Bergen Family Center. I have witnessed firsthand the important and impactful work organizations like the Women's Center have made to advance gender justice and economic growth, while strengthening whole communities. It is fitting that we are here today as we close out Women's History Month to raise our collective voices to sound the alarm against the impending federal cuts that make this work possible. Women drive our economy, and we know that investing in women yields substantial returns, not only for individual businesses, but for entire economies and society. Put that up against the data showing disproportionate rates of poverty, violence, exploitation, hunger, homelessness, and housing insecurity that place women and children among the most vulnerable and at risk in New Jersey and in our country. Why then, we ask, would the federal government threaten the very funding needed to effectively grow and sustain our economy? For us, it is more than that. It is a moral and public health imperative to ensure that women have complete autonomy over their reproductive health, that women and families suffering at the hands of a violent abuser have exit strategies and services that help them as they reclaim their economic independence and emotional well-being, and that mothers have access to quality and affordable childcare, housing, and food, and that women, we women, make up more than half of our population, have opportunities to earn a living wage. What is at stake for us here at the Women's Center and for New Jersey women and families? Without funding, we will not have the capacity to meet the social and economic needs of the more than 2,500 women who seek services here every year. We will not have the capacity to provide legal and other support services to the hundreds of women who rely on us to help them gain and sustain employment. And we will not have the opportunity to provide trauma-informed counseling services to the hundreds of women who are raising our next generation. As Lil often says, when one door closes, another door opens, but it is hell in the hallway. We need legislators and advocates like you, Congressman Josh Gottheimer, and thank you for your advocacy and leadership. And now I would like to introduce my friend, somebody I admire very much, Assemblywoman Hayter. Oh, okay, she's going to do the pledge.
Please join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
I think Councilman up next is Councilman Seymour is up next, and then you're going to speak Assemblywoman, right?
Thank you.
Councilman.
Congressman, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And I think you're up.
Congressman, thank you so much for the privilege and the honor of speaking to you today. Nationwide, which is tragic, about 41% of women and 26% of men have experienced intimate partner violence at some point in their lifetimes. Intimate partner violence accounts for approximately 15% of violent crime throughout our nation. Tragically, however, only about 20% of sexual assault victims and 25% of non-sexual assault physical assault victims and 50% of stalking victims towards women are reported. Survivors are in desperate need of support, housing, counseling, and legal representation as they seek restraining orders, protective orders, and other forms of support and help for themselves, their children, and their families. To that end, survivors rely upon great organizations such as the Women's Information Rights Center to provide those resources and to offer that help. Domestic violence puts a financial strain and an emotional strain on our communities and on our municipalities throughout the state of New Jersey. Fantastic nonprofit organizations such as the Women's Information Rights Center offers great resources which survivors rely upon to get the help they need. These organizations, in turn, rely upon funding. Without funding, the organizations would need to close and would no longer be able and equipped to provide the help that our families and our communities so desperately need. The Violence Against Women Act was enacted decades ago to protect survivors of domestic abuse and stalking and sexual violence. VAWA, as the Violence Against Women Act is known, helped create several safeguards to protect our families. Created a hotline for victims. It ensured that domestic violence would be treated as a criminal matter and not just a private dispute in our courts. It also expanded protections and programs to members of our LGBTQ+ and other marginalized communities throughout our nation. It also ensured free access to forensic examinations to victims of sexual assault. Through VAWA, the Department of Justice created an Office of Violence Against Women, which has provided billions of dollars to help fund shelters, law enforcement, and nonprofit organizations such as this, the Women's Rights Information Center. Without that support, without that funding, these crucial programs would cease to exist. It is therefore imperative that we come together as a community and, more importantly, as a family to fight back. We have to come together to ensure that these cuts do not happen and that our victims get the help that they need and the protection they need. Because again, it's not only for themselves, it's also for their children and our entire community at large. We must stand united against all forms of violence and abuse. I thank the strong leadership of our Congressman Josh Gottheimer for fighting every day to protect our families and our communities and our residents, and for fighting back in Washington to make sure that organizations that offer that help continue to get the funding they need. Congressman Gottheimer has our back, he has your back, and he has the backs of all of our families throughout the state. Thank you. Thank you, Congressman.
Thanks, man. Assemblywoman.
Yes.
Good morning. The Trump administration continues to target our vulnerable with recent cuts to family planning services, mental health care, domestic violence assistance, and addiction treatment. While New Jersey has codified a woman's right to choose and continues to advance policies to strengthen protections of out-of-state patients seeking reproductive care, cuts to federal funding threaten access to life-saving services. I'm grateful to Congressman Gottheimer for standing up to the administration and underscoring how important these federal dollars are to the people of New Jersey and the women around our country. Sorry, I just realized it's very bright. With the endless barrage of attacks, our freedoms, our way of life, we cannot stand idly by while the Trump administration disregards our values, dismantles our democracy. Reproductive care, mental health treatment, and basic health care is not a luxury. It is a human right. Everyone should have access to the care and support they need regardless of income or zip code. That is why these programs were created, and that is why it is so critical that they continue to receive the funding they need to care for our friends and neighbors. Your daughters, your grandmothers, your sisters, your aunts, every woman that you could think of is entitled and should have this basic care. Thank you again, Congressman Gottheimer, for bringing us together today to highlight these cuts, for your tireless efforts on behalf of New Jersey family and women. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. Thank you so much, Assemblywoman. Thank you. I think that's me, so thank you very much. First, thank you all for being here today. Incredibly grateful. Liz, thank you for your leadership here at the Women's Rights Center. Teresa and Liz Seth, thank you so much for what you do. Councilwoman, thank you for what you do. Where the councilwoman went, thank you for what you do. Thank you so much. And I want to thank Matt, thank you again. And to Assemblywoman Hayter and Assemblywoman Park, thank you for your incredible leadership in Trenton and for all you do on these issues and so much more. And I want to thank law enforcement, I know who's here, and grateful for law enforcement for making sure that everyone is safe. Unfortunately, outside places like these today, we know there are a lot of people who are focused on one thing, doing everything they can to stop women from getting reproductive advice and health care. And it's a shame, but that's just the reality that we live in today. In New Jersey, though, we are very lucky because we, I believe, have just such amazing advocates, like all of the people here today and who are standing around, who are not with us up here, but are working in these buildings every single day to actually provide incredible care and advice and counseling and a safe haven for so many people. And I just want to say thank you so much to the Women's Rights Information Center for all you do. Thank you so much. I know every elected official and council member feels the same way, and our county officials, that we're very lucky to have nonprofits like this one, who wake up every single day with leaders who volunteer and give their time and who work here and just do right and protect women's rights and ensure their success. As was mentioned, as Liz talked about, you know, we're here at the end of Women's History Month, which I think you're right to bring up. And frankly, you know, when I think about this month, we're not only celebrating great history and honoring the endless accomplishments of women around our state and our country, but we're also confronting a wave of extremists, as I mentioned, and seemingly endless attacks on women's rights, health care, and safety. And it's a shame that that's what we have to talk about today, in addition to celebrating incredible people from New Jersey who have fought so hard over the years to defend and promote women's rights, equality, and opportunity, and so many women who've blazed a trail in our great state, right? Elizabeth Cady Stanton, right here in Bergen County, who helped lead the women's suffrage movement and host the Seneca Falls Women's Rights Convention. We're home of Madam Louise Scott Roundtree, who became Newark's first African-American female millionaire after launching a line of beauty products and salons. Clara Barton, who founded the Red Cross and opened one of the first free public schools in Bordentown, New Jersey. Dorothea Dix, who lived in Trenton and revolutionized the way we treat mental health. We must honor those women and so many more, and those who are unsung heroes, who do so much in our community every day, who give back, who raise families, who work locally and support our economy, as was pointed out, who do so much to make our great state thrive and do well and be such a wonderful place to live, work, and raise a family. And those are unsung heroes, right? Who don't have their name on Wikipedia, right? But who really are heroes. To commemorate these women and so many others, and as co-chair of the Problem Solvers Caucus last Congress, I helped work closely with Carolyn Maloney, then Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, to pass bipartisan legislation into law to create the Smithsonian Women's History Museum on the National Mall, which is coming soon, ensuring the countless contributions of women across the country will be honored for generations to come. So when people go to Washington, they can celebrate women and do it properly. Despite the progress we've made, though, and all that we will celebrate, there is still so much more work to be done. Equal Pay Day was just earlier this week, and right now in the United States, in 2025, women still earn just 83 cents for every dollar paid to a man. Unacceptable. The disparities are even larger for women of color, as we know. That's why I also support and help pass the Paycheck Fairness Act in the House to close the persistent gap between men and women's earnings once and for all. We know women are such a key component of our economy, especially here in the great state of New Jersey. We won't stop fighting for equal pay until that bill is signed into law and is the law of the land. We're also witnessing in real time, even as we talk about equal pay this week, a full-scale assault on that and other key policies by far-right extremists, attacking women's safety, attacking women's health care, and they're coming in from seemingly every direction. Nearly 3 years ago, the Supreme Court turned back the clock, as we all know, and overturned Roe. That decision unleashed a tidal wave of extremism across the United States of America and ripped away the fundamental rights of millions of women across the country to make personal and private medical decisions, putting their health and safety at risk. And we're seeing this play out in real time. Many states and hospitals going further than the law act and the court actually ordered. which is crazy, but that's what many of us feared, and it's happening. I helped pass the Women's Health Protection Act in the House to enshrine Roe into federal law, but far-right extremists have made it clear that Roe is just the beginning of their attacks, and they're not going to allow progress. For more than 30 years now, the Bipartisan Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or the FACE Act, has helped protect patients and healthcare providers from threats, violence, and physical obstruction. The FACE Act allowed Englewood to establish an 8-foot buffer zone around abortion clinics, ensuring that those who seek care do so free from violence. In the last 50 years, clinics across the country have seen more than 40 bomb threats, 200 incidents of arson, 300 burglaries, according to the National Abortion Federation. And by the way, that's just what was reported, right? There are countless more that haven't reported because people are afraid to report the incidents and draw more attention. Yet in January, the Trump administration's Department of Justice announced that it would no longer enforce the FACE Act. Again, this is a protective order to protect clinics and protect women seeking reproductive health care and freedom. Then the administration dropped several ongoing investigations into threats against clinics. The administration even pardoned nearly 24 lawless thugs who violated the FACE Act by breaking in and blocking access to abortion clinics. They pardoned them for threatening and going after women's health care. The president said he would, quote, protect women whether they like it or not, whatever that means. Yet, he is refusing to enforce laws that protect them and handing out get-out-of-jail-free cards to those who threaten them. It's outrageous. And the attacks don't just stop there. For decades, the Office of Violence Against Women, and this was just talked about, but for decades, the Office of Violence Against Women, created by the Bipartisan Violence Against Women's Act, or VAWA, has administered grants that enhance legal protections for survivors, improve access to critical services, and strengthen law enforcement's ability to prevent and address domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, and stalking. But just last month, the Trump administration eliminated these opportunities for law enforcement and community-focused organizations just like this one to get funding from Washington to support survivors and prevent violence and abuse. I don't know how they look in the mirror. It's like too outrageous to even understand. How could you take away money that protects people who need help and that we know need help? An estimated 1 in 4 women in the U.S. have experienced domestic violence. In New Jersey, an act of domestic violence happens every 7.5 minutes, as this center knows very well. In New Jersey, an act of domestic violence not only occurs every 7.5 minutes, but often incidents aren't reported. So we believe these numbers are underestimating the truth. These are critical federal dollars that help local organizations like the Women's Rights Information Center save lives. But instead of supporting women, this administration is absolutely abandoning women. And they're doing it in the middle of Women's History Month, trying to erase the progress of history. As if that wasn't bad enough, far-right extremists in Congress jammed through a reckless government funding bill that gutted investments in community projects, including support for organizations like this one, that will lose funding for mental health services and well-being support services for low income, for underserved, and victims of violent crime here in Bergen County. That's one of the many reasons why I voted against this reckless and dangerous bill. But the attacks, again, just keep on coming. And if you're noticing an unfortunate theme here, the reality is, and we got people in Trenton standing up to protect us in New Jersey, but the reality is in Washington, it's a daily assault. Last month, the president signed an executive order that pulled all federal grants that contain the word woman in them. You heard me right, because that seems so outrageous and so insane and crazy and chaotic that you can't believe it to be the truth. Further jeopardizing critical support for women, for medical research that would improve women's health outcomes. Here in Jersey, we don't just sit down when a fight comes at us, right? We stand up and speak out and stand together against far-right extremists, attacks that are putting women's lives at risk. Today, I'm announcing new action to protect women's rights, safety, and health care. First, it's as part of our Jersey values, we believe deeply that we must do everything we can to protect women here in New Jersey, even if the administration refuses to. So I'm writing a letter to New Jersey State Attorney General Matt Plotkin, urging him to use every single tool at his disposal to enforce the FACE Act and hold anyone who threatens patients or providers at reproductive health care clinics or any center that provides care to women, to hold them accountable. Second, during U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi's confirmation hearing, she swore under oath to, quote, faithfully implement VAWA programs that are crucial to support survivors of domestic violence. Faithfully implement. The Attorney General said that she would, and I quote, ensure that all programs administered by the department, including those at OVW, are administered effectively and in accordance with their missions as enacted by Congress. So the office we're talking about that enforces VAWA, the Attorney General in her hearing said under oath that all programs administered by the department, including those at OVW, are administered effectively in accordance with their missions as enacted by Congress. Well, as a congressman, we enacted this. So based on her own words, in sending the Attorney General, and that's why I'm sending the Attorney General a letter about this, I'm saying, okay, you said under oath what you would do. You said that you would protect these programs and protect women from violence and protect VAWA funding and ensure these life-saving investments occur, that I voted to renew and strengthen in 2022, and that they remain available to states and communities like ours. But yet, you heard what I said, they're gutting them and going after them and freezing them and not providing them. It's time they're held accountable for their words. Third, I'm helping introduce this bipartisan Safe Vehicle Access for Survivors Act to prevent abusers from using car location technology to track, intimidate, or control survivors. This has become a very big problem with all the technology in our cars to be able to track. This legislation will finally give survivors a clear legal pathway to revoke access from their abusers, to track them, reduce their vulnerability, and help them reclaim their safety. This is just common sense. In February, I helped introduce the Right to Contraception Act to codify into law the right to access and contraception without government interference. And just this month, I signed an amicus brief to the Supreme Court, making it clear that Congress established the right of Medicaid beneficiaries to receive comprehensive, essential health care from any provider of their choice. Since I came to Congress, I've been laser focused on elevating women's health issues and making sure we do everything we can to protect domestic violence victims. I launched my Project Women's Health Initiative, a multi-front legislative agenda which includes the SEARCH Act, my bill to support research into rare diseases that disproportionately impact women. Both my Freedom to Decide Act and Protecting Personal Private Medical Decisions Act also protect doctor-prescribed access to mifepristone and support telemedicine across state lines. And I've worked with Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, to help introduce the bipartisan, bicameral Black Maternal Health Momnibus Act, a collection of bills focused on addressing the social determinants of health, strengthening maternal health, and addressing disparities that we know are all too real, and getting better data to address it. I'm proud to have helped lead the Bicameral Access to Family Building Act to establish a right for women to access reproductive medical care, including IVF, for health providers to provide these services. All you need to do is open your history books and read about what life was like before Roe, what life was like before we had great centers like this one, doing the right thing. You'll understand why this situation is so dangerous that we're under assault right now from under. We understand how important it is that we all speak out and stand up. That in the greatest country the world's ever known, that we can stand together and fight together and push back against those who are trying to undermine history, to gut critical programs that help so many people, that help so many women, that help so many families. We will not allow them to turn back the clock on progress. We will do what we do in Jersey. We stand up, we remind that our voices matter, we look at history and see what happens when you speak up and stand up and keep moving forward. You don't back down. We don't back down to extremists. We don't back down to thugs. We don't back down when they try to push their chaotic ways and gut critical programs that we know will help our families. So, in this great country, I know we can do this. Whether it's Women's History Month or next month or the month after, we will stand up together and fight, and we will win, because when we stand together, nothing can stop us, the greatest country in the world. I know our best days will be ahead. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.